Thanks everyone for joining us today. My name is Mark Miller. I'm a technology consultant here at Ingram Micro. I cover our East Territory partners. Also joining me on the call is my counterpart, Cheryl Thompson. She's the senior technology consultant handling the Central and West. We cover IBM systems, so power, storage, and software defined. And we're pleased to bring you the next installment of our technical enablement webinar series. And probably, as everyone on this call knows, us technical folks, we kind of live and breathe eConfig and everything technical. And with the shift to eConfig on cloud, we wanted to bring you a session that kind of outlines the tool while also covering the very important topic of the impact tool, where you find all of the required TDA technical delivery assessment checklists. So our guests today from IBM are Rob Morgan. He is a solutions architect on the product configurators team. We also have Monique Rosales, the IBM solution assurance manager. She corrected me on that, and she'll get it right on the thing. So feel free to post your questions in the chat. Wait till the Q&A opens at the end. Feel free. Rob, let's get started.
Very well. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Great. Okay, thanks. And thanks for the chance to participate and share this today. I'm Rob Morgan. I work in the IBM CIO team, actually, but as part of leading the development effort that's been working on this transition from eConfig, the workstation application, which has been around for a long time and is sort of aging to try to get us to a new generation of the technology that we have available to do configuration of power and storage products, and that is eConfig on cloud. So what I want to share with you today is just a brief overview about what it is, to make sure there's no confusion there. Then we'll talk about just a couple of recent changes. I won't spend much time on this because I really wanted to get in and spend a few moments to show you the basic capabilities, how the system works, and we'll see if you have any questions that you want to get into regarding that. So what eConfig Cloud is. eConfig Cloud really is, it's the exact application that you know and understand today as eConfig, right? Giving the ability to do the hardware and related software and services configurations for power and storage brand products. But as you know, it's limited today to the Windows platform, right? It's been around for a long time, and it's based on some technology that's getting kind of old from our vendor that we work in cooperation with to deliver the application to you. So a couple of years ago, we embarked on a transition to move to the vendor's newer technology platform, which is cloud-based and running on servers in the cloud, and then redeveloping the user interface from eConfig today to work in a web browser. So the advantage, of course, this is going to give us is this expands a lot the kind of environments that we can support. Now you can really use this in any environment that supports a browser. So you can Windows 7 and 10, Mac, Linux, and it even works in things like tablets. You know, if it's a device that supports a standard browser, eConfig Cloud will work there. So we think that gives a lot more advantages to people in terms of flexibility for the platforms they want to use and environments that they want to use the application. But the functionality is the same functionality. So you'll see a lot of familiarity with that functionality. Now, I know for some people, you know, they wish there was a change in some of the functionality, but we really had to have a transition plan that allowed us to work in both worlds for a period of time. And so that's why the look and feel that you're going to see of eConfig Cloud should match in many ways to what you're used to using with what we call eConfig Classic, or the workstation application of eConfig Cloud. So the layouts of the pages are going to be very similar. The capabilities are going to be very similar, but there are some unique new features that are incorporated, and we'll talk about that a little bit. As I said, eConfig has all of this critical basic function of eConfig, but there's some new options that are available. So, you know, it still supports create an initial order configuration. It still supports doing a MES upgrade, starting from a base configuration, and creating all of the standard outputs that you know and understand today, right? Whether they're text files, CFXML files, CSV files, RTF, HTML. So all those capabilities are still there, producing the same kind of outputs that you're used to using. There's no change that should be required for that. But there are a couple of new facets of this. For example, with prices. In eConfig today, when you get a price, you're going to get it from a price file that you download from IBM. And depending on when you download that price file, it could be up to 2 weeks old, the prices that you're looking at. Well, now on eConfig Cloud, we get those prices real time. So whenever you're doing configuration, when you go to price that configuration, we go in real time to the central database source, which we call WWTRT, Worldwide Pricing Tool. And it gives us the prices display in the application. So you're always seeing the most current prices and pricing actions that have happened in IBM, as opposed to potentially seeing old prices and having some discrepancy with what you may see in other applications. We think is an advantage also because now we're using the exact same price source that ePricer uses. So we should have fewer chances for you to have something that the pricing that you see in eConfig and the pricing that you see in ePricer are inconsistent. We still support inventory retrieval from inventory services, but we've got a little bit tighter integration there. I'll show you that a little bit in the demo. So you can get information more directly back from inventory services in the eConfig Cloud. We have a new concept called a configuration repository. I like to describe this as, a configuration version of Dropbox or Box, depending on what sort of cloud-based storage applications you might be used to. But it's a place to store your configurations online in a directory and structure that you can control and share with others as needed. But then you don't have to store all of those files all the time if you don't want to. But you still have the option of working with files like you do today. So there's all the capabilities still of doing exports, getting information out of the system, and saving it locally on your hard drive. Just some recent things. If you've been involved with eConfig Cloud at all, and I hope most of you have, we've been on an evolutionary path, right? There's been some challenges and some capabilities that we've still been on the path to deliver. We've delivered some of those recently. I'll show you a few of them as we get into the demo, but one of the really highly desired ones is what we call Fast Path. So it skips you having to go through the base edit screens when you're starting an MES and doing those validation steps. If you know that you're not going to be changing your base configuration, you're able to go in and select this fast path option, and it skips you having to see those screens. It'll still present error messages if you have something you have to deal with, but you don't have to see the base screen or the after the validation, so forth. So that helps in terms of some time savings, we hope. We've done some things with navigation to make the left bar navigation on both of our main pages and on the product configuration pages more independent so that it's more visible and you have less scrolling to do. We've added some capability now to do placement from the catalogs in detailed diagram. This really applies primarily to Power brand. We've fixed the installed system summary to add system type, system number, and customer number. That's been a problem that some people have noted. And we're continuing to work on output corrections. Outputs has been one of our struggle points, making sure we get them exactly matching to what we have in eConfig today. There are a lot of subtle differences in terms of what those outputs are expected to look like around the world. And so we've been wrestling with making sure we understand the 20 years of heritage of how these things have evolved to try to get them to match. We're getting close, and part of that is a big piece of work that we've done to refactor our pricing calculations. So they're done in a more consistent way making them consistent across the output. So we're deep in our testing of that right now. We want to make sure that we get that right. So we're doing some intensive testing. But as that comes out in the coming few weeks, we hope that it's going to result in seeing a lot more consistent and quality price numbers in your outputs. So without spending any more time on that, let me take a few minutes and jump into eConfig Cloud here. So I'm going to jump over to my web browser. I happen to be using Firefox here. But again, you can use Firefox, Chrome, Safari on the Mac, or Edge. We do not recommend Internet Explorer. We have a lot of issues with some of the technologies that we're using in Internet Explorer. So if you are an IE user and you want to use eConfig on Cloud, we advise you not to. And try to pick one of these other standardized browsers. I'm using Firefox here for now. So you can see I have here on this main page, I have all the different capabilities that I can do. I can create an initial order, create an upgrade. I can work in my repository. I can open a local CF report if I have a local file. And by the way, that includes files that were created in eConfig desktop version. So if I create, if you created it in desktop version 3 months ago and you want to bring it into eConfig Cloud, you can perfectly do that. There's no issue with having to convert it or redo it. And then we have a help section, and if we have a little time, we'll take you to real quick. We have some news. I happen to be in an environment where we're not showing the news right here, but you'll see announcements in this news section frequently about either fixes that have come out or issues that we're seeing in the system or model deploys as they happen. So this is a good area to keep an eye on every time you come to eConfig to make sure that you know what the latest things that are going on. So let me take this, let me just start with an initial order. Now on this first page, I'm going to select a developer role here, but I'm going to go ahead and do something for the storage brand. I'll just pick that one. And you have to give your configuration name. And you can optionally put a description in here. But once you select your role, now most of you will be defaulted to a role, so you won't have to pick this. I do because I have some different ways that I can use the application. But once you select your brand and your name, you just say start configuration, and that's going to launch to give you the same similar flow that you're going to have in eConfig workstation version today, right? I'm going to come to this global settings page, where I'm going to see the main overall settings that I need to pick, my geography, my customer requested arrival date, if I'm working with withdrawn products, etc. When I'm satisfied with all of those things, I can just hit finish here. And now it's going to take me to the main page of the application. We refer to it as the main page, where you can begin to build your application. So you can see there's the basic on the left, what we call the configuration list. This is where you're going to see the products as you configure them. There's the catalog here in the center where you can add products to the configuration. And then there's the common views that you have today, right? I have the messages view, I have a diagram view, and a proposed tab when I want to see the actual proposed output. Well, in the catalog, let me just add a product from the catalog. Now, we have a couple of ways you can interact with this catalog. You can select through drop downs, and so you can kind of drill into the categories you want and pick the different categories to drill in, or you can just do a little bit of a type ahead up here. So let's say that I want to do a disk product. So I can type just in here and it'll find all the things that have that string in it. We happen to have one disk category, so I'm going to select it. And now it's going to bring up my primary wizard here in the storage brand where I can pick the storage product that I want to use. So the one I always use is this one, been around a while, so I know it. I am not a product expert, by the way, so if I make selections that make you cringe, please don't worry, because I don't do delivering these on a daily basis like you guys do. I don't have the depth of understanding of the products as well as you do, but I have the ones that are my go-tos. So with this product, now you can see here on the left are what we would refer to as the tabs. What used to be across the top, we move them to the left, and that is for some future design considerations in terms of being adaptive to things like tablets and even phones. And then on the right-hand side are all the selections that you can make. So as I go through, I can see these. If you ever configure this product, it should look very familiar to you in terms of the kinds of selections that you have and the categories. So let me go in here. I know here, for example, I need a couple of host adapters. So I'm going to pick that. And then I know that I need a couple of drives on this product. So I select the drives tab. I'll select a couple of flash drives. Now, one thing I want you to notice here on the left is as we go through the product, you see these check marks. This means that you visited the tab. So I know there are some products in IBM and some where they want you to visit specific tabs to make sure that you've considered the selections on that tab. Well, now you have this capability. For example, on this product, they like you to visit the related software tab, I believe. So you come here now, and now if I go back up to miscellaneous, I have an indication there that, yeah, I've been to the related software tab. I don't need to go back there again. So once you've done all your selections and everything, you can select OK here. You're going to get any sort of messages that you would typically get in eConfig Classic. And when I have all the products that I want in this category, I can select Finish here. And now I'm going to come back to this main page, and now you can see that my disk product over here on the left. Here's the 5332, 986. Here's some of the services that automatically got added based on my global settings. If you need to change this, well, you can go over here and select this little dot here. As you roll over these, you'll notice each one of them pops up a dot, and it gives you the chance to make a selection on them. So for example, if I needed to go back into global settings for some reason, I could click here on global settings, but this gives you a full context of all the actions that you can do for that wizard. So on the disk here, you could see that, for example, this is the way that I would delete this item. I would select the dot here and I would say delete. Now in the center section here, I have all of my messages that I can deal with. And so I can scroll through and check the messages. I have this function to show me all of my must-read messages, so I can just review them at once. Hit close here, and then I can go to my proposed tab and get my proposed output for this configuration. So let's see here, it's typical to what you would expect to see in the proposed output with the prices, any of the information about CRAD, and here's the details. Now I can collapse these sections over here on the left. So if you want to make it a little bit easier to read, you do have that flexibility in the application. And then I can save this, and this is going to save this to the configuration repository, right? It's going to save it with a name demo 100. Or I can export these, and the export works like you're used to. You pick all of the types of exports that you want. You can go through and say, I want the CFR and the CFXML. You can select to save it as multiple files, or you can create it in one zip file if it's easier for you to package all of those together. And then you can save the files on your local drive, or you can email it. Now, emailing it goes to your own email, the email that's registered with your IBM ID. We don't allow you to email to other people from here, but that's really a lot for security and simplicity things that we don't have to worry about dealing with email addresses and so forth. So it sends it to your email address, and then from there you can forward it to whoever you need to. Use distribution lists from your own email and save it to your local folders and so forth. So that's the basic layout. And then we have the diagram like we have in any of the applications. A diagram is not used as much in storage as I understand, used more in power, but we have the same diagram capability, and you can have the same capability to take certain actions here from the diagram. So I can, like here, you can select that, and you see the edit action pops up there. And when you're done, if you've saved your exports, you can end your session here. So I'm going to do that here. There's a couple of capabilities, and of course an upgrade here. You're going to do something very similar. Again, I'm going to select my role. I'm going to select the storage brand again. And you have different sources. You can retrieve your base from a configuration that's already in the repository. You can use a local CFR file if you want to. You can select inventory services. This is actually going to launch directly to the inventory services application where you can retrieve things and bring them down. This is a future service that's coming. It's not available in production yet, but it's going to be there in the next month for a new source of inventory data directly from LMS. You can manually build your base like before, and we have this new feature we call quick retrieval. I'll show you this real quick. So I'm gonna pick a machine here. And this happens to be a machine in the Netherlands. So I'll select Netherlands. And what you can do here is if you only have one serial basically and the associated products with it to connect, you can do it through this quick retrieval. And then I can say start configuration. And now I'm not even going and bringing up the inventory services screen. I'm just going to inventory services. It's passing this data there and it's bringing back the product where I can start my MES. So you can see here, it took me directly into base edit where I can make any changes to this if it's necessary, validate and start my upgrade. So let me quickly take a second and I'll take you into the configuration repository. Sorry. Okay. I'm going to do this the easier way. So in terms of the configuration repository, like I said, it's something very similar to Box or Dropbox. You're going to have your configurations in here that are saved by you. You can see them all listed. Here's some listed for me. If I want to, from this configuration view, I can go and let me get something here. Like here, this one here, you can edit the configuration from here. You can view it. I can also create my exports straight from here. So if you have a configuration in a repository, you need the CFR, you don't have to load it back into eConfig Cloud to then select export of the CFR. I can do it straight from here and I can bring up the export window. And if you'll see here, it's the exact same export window that's going to come up and it's going to be the exact same data so that you can use that. You also have the ability to share this with other people. So if you see here, there's a share action, and I can share this with my colleague Ed Cordell, who many of you probably would know, and I can share it as a role of either making him an owner, which means he has full control to change it, delete it, or just a collaborator, which means you can primarily edit it. So in this case, I'm going to add Ed as a collaborator on this, and now I can Ed can see this configuration. Where he would see this configuration is over in this shared with me section. So you can see here's some that have been shared with me and by other individuals. These are ones that have been shared with Ed in different periods of time. So I can now access these configurations and edit them or view them or get the exports. So I think I'm going to just switch back quickly to my presentation deck. And talk to you a little bit about schedule. We hopefully you all have had a chance to get access to this. It's fully available to everybody. You get to it through Partner World. There's information in there if you look up in eConfig Cloud, and this link below will help you with that. We're hoping to sunset sometime in the early third quarter, I think late July kind of time frame. But there's things that we're still monitoring, our defects and issues. And of course, this pricing refactor, making sure that our pricing is, correct and reliable and something you can trust. And the stability issues that we're working on, we're still having some problems where people will, lose their session unexpectedly. We're digging through we just found one today, one reason that we didn't understand that we see now what's happening. So those are sort of the key things that are going to govern when we make some of these changes. But that's, Alex, pretty soon. So if you haven't had a chance to look at it, we'd encourage you to do so. And reach out to your team there at Ingram who can get with us if there's things, additional information that you need that can help you. So I'm going to, with that, I guess, stop and see if there's any quick questions, Mark, and turn it back to your team.
Thanks, Rob. If anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself if you are. No questions in the chat. So as we switch over.
So if we have any enhancement requests, is that going to be done like immediately, or is like there's going to be a review and take time to understand why the request is being made?
Well, we'll look at them as we can and assess them. We have to prioritize them against all the other things that are being, that we need to work on. We do look at them pretty aggressively, and try to do our best. We have an active development team, so we're constantly putting out updates. We put out 13 new features in May, I think it was. So, I can't make any promise that it'll be out in 2 weeks if it comes in, but we will look at it and give you some, some feedback quickly in terms of if we can do it and if we have any sort of outlook of when it could be done.
Okay.
Okay, doesn't sound like there's any more questions. Thank you, Rob.
Okay, thanks for your time today.
Now we turn it over to Monique.
All right, great, thank you. Let me bring up my screen here. Let me minimize this. Okay, great. My name is Monique Rosales, and I am the Solution Assurance Program Manager. I actually wear two hats. And my day job is I'm responsible for the execution of the solution assurance process for IBM direct deals for IBM hardware and software in North America. And then I'm also responsible for the systems solution assurance process worldwide. So, like I said, multiple hats. Anyway, let me kind of dive here into the overview here. Not sure how much everybody knows about solution assurance. I wanted to spend at least one slide here on talking about the process. So solution assurance is one of IBM's quality practices, and the reviews are called technical and delivery assessments, or TDAs. And for those of you who've been around for a long time, they used to be called SARs, or solution assurance reviews, or even systems assurances at one time. There are two types of reviews that we do, and specifically the reviews that I'm talking about when the brands require reviews, or TDAs, they are requiring an expert level review. The process is actually scalable, and there are three types of reviews that can be done. There's self-reviews, peer reviews, and expert level reviews. What I focus on is the expert level reviews, and those are the ones that are required. So the two types of expert level reviews are pre-sale reviews and pre-install reviews, and they happen at two different stages in the sales cycle. So there are the pre-sale reviews that focus on solution design, and it takes place before the final proposal is presented to the client, and clearly before they have decided to sign on the dotted line and agree to make the purchase for either the product or the solution that's been proposed to them. The pre-install TDA takes place and focuses on the installation readiness and the client's readiness and ability to accept the solution into their environment, and takes place once the client agrees to order the equipment. And obviously, you have a window of opportunity here. So after they agree to purchase, and then before the equipment is installed. Now, I want to make sure that you're aware that there are certain products and solutions that will not ship until the pre-install TDA has been completed and has been confirmed via the TDA confirmation form in Resource Link. Specifically, it is IBM Z enterprise power, and now ESS. The TDA requirements are published internally to IBM and also out in partner world for the business partners. And there are two lists. There is the list that is called SA 855, the worldwide trigger criteria and designated product list for systems. And this will contain the hardware and hardware related software. And SA 331, which is the worldwide trigger criteria for software. If you need any additional information on the overall solution assurance process, there is another website, which is SA 1039. And by the way, these are hyperlinks here. So when you do have access to this presentation, it will take you directly into Partner World. This is a much more detailed process document that will have a lot more hyperlinks and details into the overall process that you'll have access to. Additionally, we have, I guess Rob kind of set the stage for me. He was talking about improving our technologies, going from old tools to new tools. And we didn't even have an old tool. Our previous checklists were actually done in Word and Excel. And a couple years ago, we decided that we wanted to put our checklists in the cloud. And so we developed a tool that is called Impact. Impact has now become not only our online checklist tool, but it's also a repository for storing the results of your TDAs. And there's two audiences that are really targeted for the use of the Impact tool. It's one, the sales and technical sales teams who actually are the first user group, if you will. And then the second group is the quality practitioners or those who are part of the review team or the subject matter experts. So let's kind of talk a little bit more about the tool Impact and also the review process that entails. So what happens initially is the sales or the technical sales team will log into Impact and create a record by filling out the following fields. And on the right-hand side, you'll see that I've got a little screen print. These are the initial questions that you will answer just to create your initial record. You'll fill out what do you want to name the checklist, and you want to give it something meaningful because once you start to accumulate these checklists or these records, you want to be able to differentiate between each individual record every time you go back in there. While it's in draft, you'll be able to rename it, but once you've saved it and you've certified it, you won't be able to rename it. So you want to be able to give it something meaningful. And by the way, we don't have a sandbox for you to play in. So if you do decide to go in there and play, just make sure that you use the name test in the record so that we know that it's one that you're playing around with, because about every month or 2 months, we'll go in there and we'll delete those records just so that we can kind of do a little bit of housekeeping. So anyway, you want to name the checklist. You want to identify the installation country, and that's for routing purposes. And then we get to the section, are you a business partner or an IBM submitting on behalf of a business partner? And here you will mark yes. And once again, this is for routing purposes. And then you need to identify the email address of the person in your company who is going to be the quality practitioner, provide their IBM ID and the name of the company. And this is very important because this is who, once you submit your TDA request, this is who that request is going to route to, and this is the person who's going to conduct the review for you. Now, in North America, we offer a billable offering. So if a business partner does not want to conduct their TDA, or if they're brand new to the process and they need help, or they want some skills training, they can pay IBM and we'll conduct the review for them. And in the process, we also train them. And so that's what that button is for, is do you want to pay IBM to perform the TDA, yes or no? And then next you'll select, is this for a pre-sale or a pre-installed TDA? And then once you select either button, then it will bring up a list of the possible checklists that are available to select from. And you can select multiple checklists. So below that, you'll see I've got some notes here. Very important to mention here that we have within IBM a rule that's called separation of duties. Now, I didn't mark this here, but it's a little technical, but let's just net it out. Separation of duties means that you need to make sure that whoever has been involved in the opportunity in developing the configs in the solution design is not involved in the review process in terms of the design review team. So if you are on the sales team, if you develop the solution, if you develop the configs, you cannot be the quality practitioner and you cannot be a subject matter expert. You need to be independent. So that's really what that means, separation of duties. And so what will happen in the tool is when you, and there's going to be another window that you'll fill, there'll be a field, two fields that you actually fill out where we actually ask who developed the solution, who developed the configs, is it's checking just to remind you that the name of the quality practitioner can't match the fields of who designed the solution, who developed the configs. And if it does, then it's going to give you a warning. It can't be that same person. And that's because it's checking for separation of duties. So long story short, that's if you ever see that, that's why that's happening. Just a reminder, business partners are contractually obligated to perform the reviews on your opportunities. You can always pay IBM to do it. And really the net of this is, it comes down to client satisfaction. At the end of the day, we want everything to go smoothly. We're dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and we want a happy customer because it's a lot easier to sell to a client who's had a very positive experience than one who's had a negative experience. You all know that. When you look at the trigger criteria and you see that a TDA is required, whether it be first in client location or not, it's always optional. You can always do it even when it says it's only first in client location. The tool is there. Even if you want to do it when it's not required, you can still do it in the tool. So it's not that, oh, it's not required, I can't use the tool. You can use it at any time. So just want to put that out there. Basic access to the tool requires a valid IBM ID, and for business partners, we just need to make sure that you're listed as an active employee for your company. And what we're doing for security reasons is we're just checking against the business in Partner World. There's a Partner World profile for your company, and that's what we're doing for the security check. So if for some reason you can't get in, it's one of two reasons. Either there's an issue with your IBM ID or you're not listed in your company's Partner World profile. So it's one of the two. We don't own those systems. It's just the sign-in system that we're using to get into our tool. But that's typically, it's one of the two. Okay, so once you've now created your record, you're going to see tabs that appear across the top of the next screen. And there's account info, checklist, attachments, invitees, and review request. Under the first tab, Account Info, about halfway down, there's a section that's called Co-Author. And this allows you to invite a peer or a coworker to also work on the record. And so once again, you have the ability to entitle someone access to your record. So you're basically granting them edit access where they can view, edit, or even submit on your behalf that record. But once it's submitted, that record goes into read-only mode. So just to make you aware, once it's submitted, you cannot do any more editing. So you want to make sure that once you're ready to submit that you've got everything in that record, because then the ownership then gets passed off to the person who is the quality practitioner. Okay, you can save your documentation, and I'm going to show you in the next slide where it goes into your working area and it gets saved as draft. The next tab, which is the checklist tab, I want to just point out one thing is if you previously selected multiple checklists, there are going to be sub-tabs under that checklist tab. So just, I want to point that out, that there could be more than one checklist that you're working on. So don't forget about that and only work on one checklist and then submit it, because then that second or third checklist are still blank. The one thing that we did with the checklist, and the beauty of having it online and being able to do some programming with it, is that we were able to actually help save the user's time by streamlining the questions. So based on how the questions are answered, we're able to skip questions or even entire sections that don't apply. Whereas in the past, when it was in Word and Excel, you had to go through and put in NA, and answer every single question. Here we're able to eliminate that and hopefully make it a lot quicker as you go through some of these checklists. The invitee table, I want to point out, has really no special functionality. It doesn't really grant access to anybody because you put your name on it. Some people have thought that, so I want to point that out. It's really for the purpose of identifying who needs to be invited to the review, and then for the quality practitioner, they actually will mark who attended the review, because we do have the ability to do some attendance reports and things like that. Now, when you've completed all of these tabs and you're ready to request your TDA, you're going to click on the Submit button that's under the Review Request tab. And this will route to the person that you have identified in your company as the quality practitioner. And if you did mark that button that you want to pay for the TDA, then a notification will also go to those in IBM for your geography. Well, actually in North America, it'll go to our team in North America that you want to pay for the review, and then you'll be contacted by somebody on our team to get that scheduled. So let me kind of go through a couple of the other screens that you're going to see. When you first log in, the home screen for the default access, you're going to see 3 buttons. There's a button to create the new package, which is going to give you the checklist and the ability to submit a TDA request. You click that the very first time you're creating a new record. But the second button down is Work on Checklist. This is your working queue. So after you've created the record and then you've saved it as a draft, it's going to go into that section. So when you come back later on and you want to work on it, you click on that Work on Checklist button, and then you'll see in that view the records that are in draft, the ones that you've already had reviewed, those that may have failed, those that may have been submitted and were canceled. If you go on and look at the next area down, Work on Checklist, I've got a screen print here that shows you, you'll see the review ID, you'll see the name of the record, the status, the creation date. It will also should show you the name of the quality practitioner if the record was already reviewed and the invitee table was properly filled out. And then you'll see some action buttons on the far right-hand side. Now I've got the legend here on the bottom of the slide. The folded paper icon allows you to download a PDF of the checklist. Now, this is a snapshot in time. So if you're currently working on the checklist and you download it, it's going to show you the questions and whatever answers you may have in there at that time. If you go and you spend some time working on it and then you download it again, it will capture those additional questions that you've answered. If you download it before you even start working on it, it's a blank checklist. There's no responses that you have entered in there, okay? The little pencil icon allows you to rename your record, and it only will appear while it's in draft status. The X icon means you want to delete that record. And once again, that's only available while it's in draft status. Okay, next slide here is once you're in the record, up at the top left side of the screen, you'll see some breadcrumbs that will show you actions, work on checklists, and then the name of the record. So this will help you in case you forget, where am I in this tool? It lets you know that I'm under work on checklist view. So I'm in my working queue. I can actually click on work on checklist and it will take me back out to my work on checklist view of my working queue. Or I can click on actions and it will take me back to the home screen. So you can actually click on that and move around a lot quicker. It'll show me the name of my record below that. And then in the green box, it will show me the review ID, which is a unique number assigned to every single record. And this is important because I mentioned that for some records or for some products and solutions, a TDA confirmation is required. And specifically for this group, ESS is one that you'll probably get very familiar with as requiring a TDA confirmation and resource link. And they do ask you for the review ID. Here's where you can get the review ID number. The next box over, the blue box, is going to tell you what is the current status of this record. And down at the bottom of the slide, you'll see the various statuses that are available in the tool. Draft, review requested, passed, passed with actions, failed, and then two different reasons for why you would have canceled status. And then it does have a time date stamp too that I didn't put in a box there, just to let you know when it was last saved. The system does auto-save as you're working in the tool, especially when you're working on the checklist. You'll see a little spinner go off every time you've made a selection. So it does auto-save. And that way you don't lose any work. Moving on, you'll also have, once you're in the checklist tab, this is very important because we can at times go and update additional questions, some newer versions. And you'll see next to your status, it'll say what version you're at. Now, this area, this is still a work in progress. What information you currently get is it will tell you what version we are at, and it'll just tell you if it's the latest or if it's an old version. So here's an example of what you'll see. So pay attention to this because as you're working in the checklist, you need to know, oh, if I'm on an old version, just be aware there may be newer questions that you're missing. Currently, there's no way to magically push a button and get a newer version. You just have to create a brand new checklist, okay? So that's why I said it's not really ideal right now as to how you can simply just get a newer version. You just have to create a brand new checklist. If you haven't started working on the checklist and you see that it's an old version because you created it a long time ago and just never got to it, it may be easier just to create a brand new checklist. Okay, next item is for those that are identified as the quality practitioner, they are then entitled to a separate view. They're going to see an additional button on their view called Review Checklist, and you'll see that on the screen print here. What they will see in their view is a reviewer section under each question, and what's programmed into the tool is that the tool will make a recommended action item based on the responses that the person has supplied. These recommended action items can be edited, or they can even be removed if they don't feel, or the review team doesn't feel that this applies. Now, what's very important is that you have to be in the quality practitioner view. You have to be under Review Checklist view in order to certify the review. So if you don't have the quality practitioner access, you won't be able to get into this view and you won't be able to certify the review. Okay. I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through the role and the responsibility of the quality practitioner, but basically suffice it to say, they're responsible for coordinating the review, conducting the review, making sure the right people are on the review, and then ultimately documenting the results and certifying the review in Impact. There's a button that they'll click on that will say certify, and the results will change. Very important, second to the last bullet here. The record is not complete until it is certified. If the record still says review requested, then the record is not complete. And that's one of the biggest things that I see with people who are new to the process or haven't gone through the education is I see a lot of records that are still sitting there under review requested and they think they're at end of job. So that's why I really want to highlight this is make sure that the record has been certified by the quality practitioner. And also we want to make sure that the quality practitioner has identified who attended the review. When I go to the invitee table, I either don't see names or I see a bunch of names and next to their name where it said, did they attend the review? It said no. So it says nobody attended the review, but we certified it. That doesn't make sense. Okay. Lastly, there is a blue feedback button on the right-hand side of the screen while you're in Impact. If you have any comments, questions, issues, click on that button. You'll be able to select the category of your feedback. You'll even be able to create a screen print of your current screen that you're in, and then you can send it to our team. If for some reason you don't have access to the internet at that time, or you can't get into Impact, you can always send an email to saadmin@us.ibm.com and give us a description of what your problem is if you encountered a problem, and give us as much details as possible. We had somebody yesterday telling us that they had a problem with a checklist on a specific question, but they didn't tell us what checklist it was. So that's kind of important. If you need to get to the user guide or education, if you go to the Help Education button, there is a user guide there, and there is an MP4 that I recorded that walks you through the use of the tool. Later this summer, probably in the July timeframe, I'm going to be re-recording that MP4 since we have added some additional functionality since I last recorded that. I'm going to be doing an update to that. And then also, as Rob mentioned in his presentation, our tool is supported on Chrome, Firefox, Safari, and Edge. Do not use IE. There are known issues, and it's not supported on our application. And with that, we have just a couple minutes for any questions.
No questions in the chat.
Okay. So either it was clear as mud or I put everybody to sleep.
Question.
Go ahead, Keith.
So when you say, so being the end user business partner here and Ingram being our distributor, if we sell a product that requires a technical delivery assessment and we say, oh, we want someone to pay for it, is that Ingram then going to IBM and not in a cost pass-through, or should we be using Ingram as part of the design or the validation of the solution? So this finds me, I find this a bit confusing. I don't sell a whole lot of products that require TDA, although I'm baffled that like an 8960 F24, the smallest 24-port brocade switch still requires a technical delivery assessment. I find that baffling.
Yeah, you would go to IBM to conduct a review. Now, you can talk to your distributor to see if they have the resources or are willing to assist with a TDA. In the past, there were distributors that did have resources and were able to offer that, but I don't know what the distributors are offering today.
Hi, Keith. This is Cheryl Thompson. Yes, it is the partner's responsibility for completing the TDA, but myself and Mark Miller, as technology consultants in the field, we are here to help our business partners do that.
Okay.
So with that, we'll close today's call. Monique, Rob, thank you very much
Okay.
for the support. This recording will obviously be available to all the business partners. You can disseminate through your organization for people that couldn't make the call. The presentations will be available in the box folder for your review as well. With that, thank you all.